And amongst that, over 40% of my staff in the Department of Labor, in my top administrative unit, is Latino and Latinas. So nobody's going to tell me that we're going to stop now. We're going to keep moving. And I hope that all of you will be encouraged to continue to support the policies of this administration, that you will help us move along the reform we need to see in healthcare, because so many Latinos are not able to access healthcare, and especially our children. 33% of our children remain uninsured under the age of 6. That is a disappointment, and we have to make that change. So thank you for this. Mickey, thank you for everything and for all of you being here. It's been a real pleasure to see a lot of you here, and I hope that you will be encouraged also to take note that when we talk about increasing our representation, it isn't just in one segment of our society, but we also want a few good men and women to come and work for me. So thank you.
Community. Thank you. Welcome. There are a couple of other acknowledgments I'd like to make. We are very pleased to be joined by a councilman-elect, a very historic election to be sure. Councilman-elect James Diosa from Central Falls, Rhode Island, 24 years old. Councilman, please stand and be acknowledged. We wish you a long and successful career in Rhode Island. Also, we have been joined, and we're very grateful for that, the former Secretary of the Army of the United States, Luis Caldera. This new book, Growing American Roots, by Senator Bob Menendez, we believe is a significant contribution to better understanding the Latino experience in America. 200 of you were provided a copy courtesy of the Latino Leaders Network. Senator Menendez was the recipient of the Nambe Eagle Leadership Award, just as Hilda received, in 2004 at the very first Latino Leaders Network event. He has agreed to share a few thoughts on his book today before we close, and will remain with us for an hour following the program just outside the ballroom to sign your books, if you'll be patient enough to wait. Please welcome author and United States Senator Bob Menendez to the podium.
Bueno, buenas tardes, and I understand it is a buenas tardes because you've been here a while, but you've had a great program. Let me first thank Mickey for his continuous leadership and advocacy for our community and bringing us together and celebrating our Latino leadership in this country so that the rest of the nation understands what enormous contributions we have and continue to make to America. Mickey, thank you so much for what you do, bringing us all together at the Latino Leaders Network. And having to follow the Secretary of Labor is a labor of love. And let me just say, what a difference an election makes. Having Secretary Hilda Solis be the voice for working men and women in this country, and promoting an agenda that brings people back to work in the midst of some of the toughest economic times the nation has faced since the Great Recession is an enormous challenge. I couldn't think of anyone who can do that job better, having served with her in the House of Representatives. She is tenacious, if nothing else, just in case you don't know the Secretary. She is tenacious, if nothing else, incredibly bright and committed with passion to justice for all. And the difference of having a Secretary of Labor from someone, for example, in our community, you just heard in very brief strokes what a difference it makes. And so we are thankful for her service. She is a great example to Latinos and Latinas, obviously, across the country, that que sí se puede. When we say sí se puede, eso es un ejemplo de lo que se puede hacer con las oportunidades cuando se presenten. Y la secretaria es un buen ejemplo de eso para toda la nación. I want to thank, I know there are many members of the administration here, and we salute the President in making an unprecedented number of appointments of Latinos to key positions outside of the box positions. We, of course, are never satisfied. We want more, but we have made probably the most significant progress that we have seen in appointments, and we have to give the President the credit for doing that, because as the Secretary said, when you have somebody in a position of authority, they are able to, by the standards they set, the positions they take, and the policy advocacy that they create, are able to permeate throughout that individual department, a way in which many of the challenges that we have had and desire to achieve have not been realized, and they can be realized when there is leadership at the top, and that makes all the difference in the world. So I salute all the different members of the administration who I see here. My colleague, like Ruben Hinojosa, Mickey's introduction caught me as I was dedicating my book to him, so I was trying to run up here as quickly as possible without cutting the dedication short, to my colleagues like Ruben in the House. And finally, let me just say, you know, this is the most challenging time that we have had as a country. If I think about my 37 years of public life and what this president has inherited with this Congress, it's an enormous array of challenges. Any one of them individually would be a very significant challenge. Collectively, they are almost overwhelming. If you think about it, Barack Obama came into the presidency facing the worst economy since the Great Depression. We say that with regularity now, but we were at the abyss. You know, when last November, after the elections, Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, and Secretary Paulson, then the Secretary of the Treasury, came to members of the Banking Committee, of which I am a member, and said, we need you to act in a very dramatic way in order to stop the collapse of financial institutions in this country. And I asked Chairman Bernanke, surely you must have enough tools at the Federal Reserve to stop that and give us enough time to think about this in a more prolonged and systematic way. He looked at me and said, Senator, with all due respect, if you don't all act within 3 to 4 weeks, we will have a global economic meltdown. A global, not a national one, a global economic meltdown. And it is that set of circumstances that I don't think all of us have come to fully appreciate and understand, that we start with that challenge to this economy, strengthening financial institutions that were otherwise at the verge of collapse and would have created systemic risk for the economy of this country, to a housing market that is in free fall, where millions of people's American dream have become their American nightmare, and a loss of a couple of $1 trillion in collective wealth, in depressed property values, a significant driver previously in our economy, to healthcare costs that continue to rise with double-digit premium increases that are not sustainable for the private sector, not sustainable for families who have to purchase health insurance who do not receive it at work, not sustainable for the government under Medicare and Medicaid in terms of our long-term debt and deficit, to meeting the challenges of an energy paradigm that sends $1 trillion abroad to countries that are despotic, wish us ill, and ultimately we fuel their ability to ultimately act on their views against our national interests and security, while we also export jobs abroad because of our addiction to foreign oil, to 2 wars still raging abroad, a nuclear North Korea, a nuclear thirsty Iran, and that's only part of it. So I'm glad you had your lunch already. So this is the challenge, though, the magnitude of the challenge that this president and this Congress has. It is enormous. Any one of those issues unto themselves would be a very significant challenge. The confluence of all of them is just amazing. So I do believe that the history of this American century is being written right now by the choices we take, the decisions we make, and the road that we travel. And that's why it's so important to have people from our community, leaders from our community, in the midst of being able to craft what those answers to these challenges are so that we can fully participate not only in meeting those challenges but in the promise of the future, and that's where I'll close. I believe that even in the midst of all these challenges, there is still great promise. And we have gone through difficult periods in our nation's history. And in going through those periods, we have come out more resilient, stronger, and with greater opportunity than ever before. And I believe we can do that again. Finally, why I wrote the book is because I am tired of listening to the Lou Dobbs, the Glenn Becks, and everyone who would have us believe that we just crossed the border yesterday and we just arrived in America. And when in fact our history goes back to before the founding of the country, when Pedro Áviles de Menendez founded the oldest city in America, St. Augustine's, Florida. I'm actually doing a title search to see if there's any relationship there, if I have any property, to the realities of that Bernardo de Galvez, the governor of Louisiana, well before Louisiana ever became a state, led a regiment to help stop the British advance against George Washington in the Revolutionary War, to Admiral David Farragut Square here in Washington, a Spaniard who led the Navy on behalf of the Union forces and coined the phrase, "damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead," to being one of the most highly condecorated persons by the Congress, to the 65th Infantry Division, an all-Puerto Rican division in the Korean War, the most highly decorated in a period of time in the nation's military history, to the names in the Vietnam War, to the first person who died on behalf of the defense of this country in Iraq, who wasn't even a United States citizen, Lance Corporal Gutierrez, who was looking to become a citizen of the United States and died on behalf of this nation. So when we talk about immigration, I don't want to hear that, in fact, we just came here yesterday and we haven't contributed to this country. We have been here since before the founding of the country. We have been patriots in its creation and its defense. We are a $1 trillion domestic marketplace today. We are growing in every single sector, moving into the middle class in faster rates. A third of the nation's school children will be Latino, which means a third of the nation's competitive future will come from this community. We are younger by a decade than the rest of the nation, which means as the nation grows, they will increasingly look to us for the quality of their health care. And finally, you can't field a Major League Baseball team without seeing a third of the roster be Latino. You can't turn on TV and not see Eva Longoria or Desperate Housewives. You can't go to the movies and not see Jennifer Lopez, and you can't put on your radio without listening to someone like Gloria Estefan. The reality is we have permeated every part of American society. We are America, and as we grow and prosper, the nation will thrive as a result of it. And that's what we try to do in the book, and we thank Mickey for making it available to all of you. Thank you very much for having me with you.
Thank you, Senator Menendez. Just a couple of closing points, if you'd just be patient here just a minute. We promised 2 o'clock, and we're going to do better than that. There are 2 members of the Latino Leader Network Board of Directors that have joined us, and I want to acknowledge and thank them also. Ken Trujillo of Philadelphia. Ken, would you please stand? And also Ruben Alvarez of Phoenix. Ruben? As in the past, sponsored material is available at the tables outside of the ballroom. We invite you to take what interests you. Thanks again to the Coca-Cola Company, to Verizon, Anheuser-Busch, and Secretary Solis, and to all of you for joining us. Finally, we look forward to continuing the Latino Leaders Luncheon series next year, its 6th season, on March 1st. Thank you once again.